The alien ships hung in the sky like shadows made of steel, their hulls glowing with strange blue light, their weapons ready but silent. The commanders inside those ships believed the battle was already won. They waited for Earth to kneel. They waited for the message of surrender. In their eyes, humanity was weak, broken, too small to stand against the great empire that had crushed hundreds of other worlds. The planet below looked quiet. Cities were dim, power grids dark. The alien commanders looked at their screens and saw no movement. No fleets rising from Earth, no armies preparing. It seemed as if humanity had already accepted its fate. They believed the humans were too afraid to resist, too late to fight back. In the command chamber of the alien flagship, the leader of the armada smiled with cold certainty, his voice deep and sharp as he spoke to his officers. He said that humans were only pretending to be strong, but in truth, they were broken. He said that soon Earth would send a message of surrender, and then the fleet would land to take the planet. They would strip it, control it, make it just another colony of their empire. The younger alien officers laughed. They compared humans to insects, weak creatures who should never have tried to rise into space. One of them asked if it would even be worth firing their main cannons. Another said, Earth should not even fight. They should just open their doors and beg for mercy. But Earth was silent. Hour after hour passed. The fleet waited in orbit, their weapons charged, their soldiers ready, and still no voice came from Earth. Some of the younger alien commanders grew restless. They asked if perhaps Earth's leaders were plotting something, but the elder commander shook his head. He said humans had no hidden strength. They had no hidden fleets. Their only choice was surrender. The silence stretched like a heavy blanket. It pressed on the fleet, on the soldiers waiting inside their ships. Some of them wanted to attack, to finish the job quickly. But the leader insisted on patience. He wanted the humans to break themselves. He wanted them to surrender, to kneel, because to him that was sweeter than battle. On Earth, the cities were dark but not destroyed. Windows showed faint glows. Families waited in fear. They looked up at the night sky and saw the alien ships like black stars. They whispered prayers. They hoped their leaders had a plan, but no one knew. The television networks were silent, radios only gave static. All that could be felt was waiting. Far above, in the silence of space, the alien flagship opened a channel. They were ready to broadcast their terms of surrender. They prepared to send a message to every human alive. The words were written, the demands clear. Humanity was to kneel, to hand over their weapons, to give up their planet and their future. Inside the alien chamber, the leader stood tall, his long hands pressed against the glowing console. He raised his voice and prepared to speak. But then something happened. It was small, almost too small to notice. A faint signal on the edge of their scanners. A flicker of movement far beyond the orbit of the moon. The officer at the sensor station frowned. He tapped the screen. He thought it was nothing. Perhaps debris, perhaps an asteroid, but then another signal came and another. Faint, distant, but growing. The officer reported it to the commander. The commander waved it away. He said Earth had no fleet. Earth had no power. But still the signals came. Faint shadows moving in the darkness, hidden against the stars. Slow but steady, as if something was waking up, as if something long hidden was rising. The alien leader turned his gaze back to Earth, ignoring the warning. He began to speak the words of surrender. He began to claim victory, but the youngest officer in the chamber felt unease. He leaned closer to the scanner. He whispered to himself the readings were strange. The signals did not belong to asteroids. They did not belong to space junk. They were too precise, too sharp. The chamber grew cold. Silence pressed in, the words of surrender still waiting to be spoken. But now the faint light of new engines flickered in the void, so small that only the sharpest eyes could see. On Earth, a child looking through an old telescope gasped. He pointed at the sky. He told his parents he saw something moving, not the alien ships above, something further, something rising from the dark. The parents told him it was only stars. But the child shook his head. He knew it was not. The alien fleet continued to wait, confident, calm, certain that victory was theirs. But in the deep silence of space far from their sight, something old, something powerful began to stir. And the silence that they thought was surrender was in truth the silence before the storm. The humans were not broken. They were not done. They were only waiting for the moment when the shadows in the dark would become fire. The alien commander smiled, thinking the world was already his. But he did not know that in the black sea of space, a fleet was waking. And when it rose, the sky itself would burn in the cold emptiness beyond the moon. Shadows moved slowly. They were not asteroids and they were not broken satellites. They were shapes of steel hidden against the stars, their engines dark, their weapons silent. They had waited in the dark for this moment. These were the warships of Earth, secret ships, ships that no alien eyes had seen before. They had been built in silence, hidden in the shadows of asteroids deep beneath the oceans, and far below the crust of the moon. Men and women had worked for years in secret, welding steel, building weapons, training crews, all while the galaxy believed humans were weak. Now, as the alien fleet waited for surrender, the hidden fleet of Earth began to stir one by one, engines lit with a soft glow, only for a second before going dark again. The ships moved like hunters in the wild, careful, quiet, patient. Inside one of the human warships, the crew sat in silence, the captain's hand steady on the console. He had waited for this day. His voice was low but filled with steel. He told his crew that Earth was watching. Earth was counting on them. He reminded them that their families were down there under the dark skies, waiting, afraid, and that it was their duty to bring hope. The crew nodded, their faces pale but determined. They knew the alien fleet was bigger, stronger, their ships armed with weapons far beyond human science, but they also knew something the aliens did not. They knew the secret of human hearts. They knew how far they could go when there was nothing left to lose. The fleet was made of many ships, massive carriers built inside hollowed-out asteroids, destroyers carved from steel and armed with missiles that could split mountains, experimental ships with rail cannons that could fire slugs faster than light, and stealth frigates wrapped in dark metal that bent light around them. Each ship had a story. Each crew had sworn an oath. Some were old soldiers who had fought wars on Earth. Others were young, barely out of training, but all of them shared the same fire, the same anger, the same promise, never to kneel. The commander of the fleet, Admiral Cade, stood on the bridge of the flagship, a giant vessel known as the Iron Resolve. His eyes never left the holomap glowing before him. Tiny red dots showed the alien armada above Earth. They looked countless, like a storm that could not be stopped. But beside them now, small green lights appeared, one by one, human ships waking. The Admiral's voice was calm. He said it was not yet time to strike. He said they would wait. Wait for the aliens to grow comfortable. Wait for them to believe the lie of silence. Then they would strike with fire. In the alien fleet, the sensor officers grew uneasy. Their screens flickered with faint readings, things they could not explain, but their commander ignored them. He said Earth had no power. He said humans had nothing, but far in the dark, those faint readings grew stronger. The humans moved their fleet carefully, hiding in the shadow of the moon, blending with the fields of broken rock drifting between planets. Their stealth ships scanned the enemy lines, counting numbers, finding weak points, marking supply ships and carriers. They knew their first strike had to be fast, brutal, and shocking. On Earth, hidden bunkers deep underground hummed with quiet energy. Commanders whispered with the fleet above. They gave orders in low voices, careful to avoid the ears of alien scanners. Whole cities waited, silent, as if holding their breath. A boy looked up at the sky and saw nothing but alien lights, but far out. Unseen by his eyes, the ships of Earth glided like hunters, each one waiting for the command. The crew of the destroyer Hammerfall sat in silence. They checked weapons again, and again, missiles armed, railguns ready. The engineer wiped sweat from his face and whispered that this was impossible. The aliens were too many, but the captain answered with steady words. He said impossible was only a word until someone proved it wrong. The stealth ship Black Echo drifted close to the alien lines, invisible in the dark. Its scanners read enemy, positions, every movement, every weakness. The crew sent the data back to the fleet, their hands shaking but their eyes steady. They knew one mistake would mean death, but they did not falter. Admiral Cade stood tall. His voice rose through the comms. He told the fleet that history was watching. He said that Earth had been mocked, called weak, called small. But now the galaxy would learn the truth. Humans did not break. Humans did not bow. His words filled every ship, every heart. And in the silence of space, determination burned brighter than stars. The alien commander finally gave the order to broadcast surrender terms. His officers cheered, believing the humans had already broken. But just beyond their vision, the hidden fleet of Earth was ready, weapons armed, engines warm, waiting only. For one word, the admiral's hand hovered over the console. His eyes locked on the enemy, his voice low but fierce as he gave the order. "Hold not yet," he said. "Let them believe, let them laugh, let them think the sky is theirs. And when the time comes, we will show them the fire of Earth." And so the fleet remained in the shadows, unseen, unheard, but alive, powerful, ready. The aliens thought the silence was weakness, but in truth the silence was a blade, waiting to strike. And when it did, the galaxy itself would remember. The alien armada floated above the blue and green world, their ships lined in perfect formation, their confidence unshaken. They had conquered dozens of planets before, and they believed Earth would be no different. To them, this was not a war. It was a hunt, and the prey had already given up. Inside the grand chamber of the alien flagship, the commanders gathered. The air shimmered with light from countless displays, maps of Earth glowing across the walls. The leader of the fleet, a tall figure with skin like silver stone, stood in the center, his eyes burning with cold pride. He declared that humans were finished, that their silence was proof of fear. The younger officers agreed with eager laughter. They spoke about Earth, as if it were already theirs. One of them said the humans would soon beg to be spared. Another suggested making the planet into a farm world, a place to feed the empire. They spoke of tearing down human cities, of enslaving the population, of rewriting Earth's skies with the banners of their kind. But still, no message of surrender came. Hours passed, and yet Earth remained silent. Some of the younger officers grew restless. They asked if something was wrong. They asked if maybe humans were planning something. But the elder commander waved the thought away, his voice cold and steady. He said humans were not capable of cunning. They were too primitive, too emotional. They had no fleets, no hidden strength, only fear. He reminded them of the Empire's record. World after world had fallen. Civilizations far greater than Earth had kneeled. He said that resistance was impossible, that humans were only dragging out the inevitable, and when they finally bent their knees, it would be sweeter for the Empire. To celebrate their victory, alien soldiers filled the mess halls of their ships. They feasted, they boasted. They told stories of easy battles fought long ago. They mocked the humans, saying their only achievements were building small ships and fighting among themselves. They laughed and said humans could barely leave their own planet, and now they thought they could stand against an empire. But not all aliens laughed in the quiet of the sensor rooms. Some officers studied strange readings, faint signals in the dark beyond the moon. They saw blips that appeared and vanished. They saw flickers that did not match natural debris. One officer whispered that perhaps something was moving out there, but his superior silenced him with sharp words. He said the Empire did not fear ghosts. The alien leader was more concerned with the broadcast. He wanted to humiliate Earth. He wanted every human alive to hear the Empire's voice, to see their power, to feel the weight of defeat before the first shot was fired. He wanted surrender without blood because surrender meant control. It meant breaking the spirit of an entire race. On Earth, people gathered around darkened screens, waiting. They had no signal, no voice from their leaders, only whispers in the streets. They asked each other when the aliens would attack. They wondered if surrender would save them. Some wanted to give up, but others clenched their fists and said they would rather die standing than live on their knees. Children looked up at the sky and saw the alien fleet like black stars. They asked their parents why the world had gone quiet. The parents held their children close, not knowing the answer. They only prayed the silence was not the end, but the beginning. Above, the alien leader raised his hand. The chamber fell silent. He commanded the signal to begin. The message was prepared. The words were sharp and cruel, demanding humanity's surrender, demanding the handover of their weapons, demanding the opening of their cities, demanding their complete submission. The screens lit with the Empire's emblem, a burning sun over chains. The commander began to speak. His voice carried through the fleet. He spoke of power, of control, of Earth's smallness. He promised mercy if humans bowed. He promised destruction if they resisted. But as his words spread through the ships, as soldiers raised their cups in mock celebration, as officers smiled with certainty, something changed in the far dark beyond the moon. The signals grew clearer. The shadows moved. The shapes of steel hidden in the void began to awaken. The alien sensors caught the first spark of engines, faint but real. The officers froze, their laughter silenced. The youngest one whispered that it was not debris, not asteroids, but ships. Human ships. The commander turned his head sharply, his silver eyes narrowing. He dismissed it again. He said it was impossible. He said Earth had no fleet. But the sensors did not lie. The shadows were moving, growing, spreading like wolves, circling the herd. The broadcast continued, the alien voice echoing with arrogance, demanding humanity's surrender. But the humans were no longer listening. Far above, their ships were waking, their weapons arming, their captains waiting for the signal. The alien leader finished his speech with a cruel smile. He believed the humans were broken. He believed the world below had already given up. He believed the silence was victory. But in the silence, there was another truth, one he could not yet see. The silence was not surrender. It was the calm before fire. It was the waiting breath of hunters hidden in the dark, and when the aliens realized it would be too late, because the first strike was already coming. The alien fleet stretched across the skies above Earth, their ships lined in neat formation, weapons charged and shields glowing. They believed victory was already theirs. Their commanders spoke with pride, their soldiers laughed with certainty. They thought Earth was broken. They thought humans were only waiting to bow. But in the dark beyond the moon, the silence broke. The first human strike began with shadows. From the blackness of space, small ships glided forward, their engines almost invisible. They were hunters moving in silence, their captains steady, their crews holding their breath. The order had been given. The time for waiting was over. The destroyer Hammerfall was the first to fire. Its rail cannon lit up in the dark. A slug of metal faster than light tore through space. It struck an alien supply ship with brutal force. The ship exploded in a burst of fire. The shock rippled across the alien formation. Alarms screamed in their halls. Soldiers stumbled as fire tore across their decks. At the same moment, missiles streaked from hidden frigates. They moved like knives, silent and sharp, striking fuel carriers. The explosions bloomed in the black. Fire spread across the alien lines. Ships twisted, engines failing. The perfect formation shattered. Alien commanders shouted in confusion, their voices sharp and panicked. They demanded answers. They demanded to know who was attacking. Their officers stuttered. Their sensors showed movement, but not enough. They said it was impossible. Humans could not do this, but the wreckage burning in the void told another story. From behind the shadow of the moon, more human ships surged forward, their hulls glinting with fire. Carriers released swarms of fighters, small and fast. The fighters darted between the larger alien ships, missiles exploding against armor, laser fire cutting into enemy wings. Inside the alien flagship, chaos grew. Officers reported ships destroyed, supply lines burning, carriers crippled. The leader slammed his hand against the console, his voice a roar. He refused to believe it. He shouted that humans had no fleet, but his eyes widened as more signals appeared. Dozens, then hundreds. Human warships rising from the dark. The human fleet moved with purpose. They struck where it hurt most. They targeted communication ships, cutting the alien fleet from one another. They struck at fuel depots. Turning the Empire's strength into flames, they struck at sensor arrays, blinding the enemy in their own skies. Admiral Cade stood tall on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, his eyes sharp, his voice steady. He gave orders with precision. His fleet, followed with perfect discipline. He knew they could not match the enemy ship for ship, but he also knew war was not about numbers. It was about where to strike and when. The crew of the Hammerfall cheered as another alien freighter split in half. Their captain silenced them quickly. He said the battle was not won. He said the aliens would strike back harder than ever. But for the first time, the crew felt hope. For the first time, they saw the Empire bleed. Alien fighters swarmed out in response, black wings against the stars. They moved fast, their weapons bright. They cut through space with deadly speed, but human pilots met them head-on, their small ships weaving between blasts, their voices steady over comms as they fought. They did not run. They did not bow. They struck, again and again. One alien officer shouted that the humans had laid a trap, that they had been waiting all along. The commander snarled and denied it, but his eyes betrayed fear. He had underestimated them. He had believed silence meant surrender, but now silence had become fire. On Earth, people saw the skies burn. Streaks of fire lit the night as wreckage fell. The alien fleet no longer untouchable. Children pointed at the sky with wide eyes. Families cried and prayed. Whispers spread that maybe, just maybe, humanity had a chance. In the control rooms deep under Earth, commanders watched the battle unfold. They whispered orders. They coordinated with the fleet above, their faces pale but filled with hope. For the first time, they believed in victory. The alien fleet tried to regroup, but the humans struck again. Stealth frigates appeared from debris fields, firing torpedoes into the sides of enemy destroyers. Massive rail slugs tore through command ships. One alien carrier erupted in a chain of explosions, its fire lighting the void like a dying star. Panic spread through the alien ranks. Voices rose in fear. Soldiers who once mocked humanity now screamed as alarms blared. The fleet that had never known defeat was bleeding. Admiral Cade gave the next command, his voice like iron. He told his ships to push harder, to cut deeper, to make the enemy feel the weight of Earth's fury. His words echoed across the fleet. Every captain, every soldier, every pilot felt the fire. The aliens had come to watch Earth kneel. They had come to claim surrender, but instead they found war. Instead they found fire waiting in the dark. The hunter had become the hunted, and the galaxy would never forget the moment when the prey struck first. And in the burning skies, the truth became clear. The humans would not bow. They would fight, they would bleed, but they would never kneel. The first strike had begun, and it was only the beginning. From the shadow of the moon, a great silence broke as something vast began to stir. The hidden fleet had struck its first blows, but now it was time for the greatest secret of all to awaken. Buried deep within the lunar crust, hidden for years in silence, the pride of humanity began to rise. The iron resolve was powerful, but even it was not the true heart of Earth's defense. The real weapon was larger, older, built in secret caverns dug into the moon itself. Thousands of workers had sacrificed in silence to build it. Engineers had died keeping its secrets. Pilots had trained in darkness, all for this moment. Admiral Cade stood tall on his command deck, his eyes fixed on the holomap. He gave the order, his voice heavy, steady, filled with the weight of history. The words echoed through the fleet. Awaken the flagship. Beneath the surface of the moon, colossal gates began to open. Dust and rock drifted away into the void. Lights flickered in the darkness, and then engines the size of mountains came alive, rumbling with a power that shook even the lunar soil. The ship rose slowly, as if the moon itself was giving birth to a giant. Its hull was black and silver, shaped like a blade, armored with layers thicker than any known warship. Weapons bristled from every angle, cannons that could split planets, rail guns that could pierce the strongest shields, missile bays that held storms of fire. The humans had named it the Titan's Wrath, and as it rose from its hiding place, the alien fleet froze. Their sensors screamed, their officers stuttered. They had never seen such a vessel. Their leader narrowed his eyes, his pride cracking for the first time. Alien voices filled the command chamber. They asked how humans could build such a thing. They shouted that it was impossible, that no primitive world could create a ship of this size. But the proof was before them, rising higher, glowing brighter. the moon itself trembling as the Titan's wrath broke free. Inside the ship, thousands of crew members stood at their stations. Pilots, engineers, soldiers, every one of them steady, every one of them ready. The captain of the Titan's wrath, a woman named Commander Rhea, stood on her bridge, her voice calm but fierce. She told her crew that the time had come, that the galaxy had doubted them, mocked them, and now it would see the truth. Her words carried through the halls, through every console and chamber. We are the fire of Earth. We are the storm in the dark. Today we rise and we do not fall. The Titan's wrath moved into the battlefield, its shadow covering the smaller ships of Earth's fleet. Human captains looked up at it in awe, their voices hushed with wonder, their hearts filled with strength. The sight of the massive warship was more than steel. It was hope made real. The alien commander shouted for his fleet to attack, to destroy it before it could strike. But fear had already spread. Ships hesitated, officers faltered. Soldiers looked at the giant before them and felt their pride weaken. The first alien cruisers opened fire. Beams of energy cut through space. Streaks of light slammed against the Titan's wrath. But its shields flared, glowing like a second sun. The ship shook, but did not break. Its armor held, its engines roared louder. Then Commander Rhea gave the order, her voice steady, cold, merciless. For Earth, fire all batteries. The Titan's wrath unleashed its fury. Rail cannons thundered, their slugs smashing through alien destroyers, breaking them apart like toys. Plasma lances cut across the sky, slicing ships into burning wreckage. Missile bays opened, storms of fire streaking through the void, tearing apart formations. The alien fleet screamed in panic, their perfect lines shattered, their voices filled with disbelief. They shouted that no human ship could wield such power. Yet their cruisers burned, their carriers split, their wings scattered. On Earth, people looked to the sky and saw the fire. They saw the massive warship rising above the moon. They cheered, they cried, they shouted in joy. They whispered its name. Titan's Wrath, the ship that turned despair into strength. In the alien flagship, the commander gritted his teeth, his pride burning away. He ordered every ship to target the giant, to crush it before it crushed them. Beams of energy and waves of missiles rained down. The Titan's wrath shook under the storm, but it did not fall. It answered with fire, greater and brighter. The smaller human ships surged forward alongside it, inspired by its might, destroyers flanking its sides, carriers releasing waves of fighters, stealth ships slipping into enemy lines to finish the crippled. Together they struck like wolves, hunting in a pack, and the Titan was their alpha. The aliens had come expecting surrender. They had come expecting silence and fear. But now they faced the storm, a storm born in the dark, a storm built from human defiance. The commander of the alien armada felt the first crack of fear in his chest. He realized this was no simple prey. This was no broken world. He realized too late that Earth had hidden its fire, and now that fire was burning his fleet. The Titan's wrath loomed over the battlefield, its cannons glowing, its armor shining through smoke and fire, its voice echoing through every human channel. A single message repeated again and again. For Earth, for freedom, we rise. And as the massive warship tore through the skies, the aliens learned the truth. The silence they had mocked was never surrender, it was waiting, it was patience, it was the calm before the storm. And now the storm had come, and it bore the name of Earth. The skies above Earth were no longer silent, they were burning. The alien fleet unleashed its fury. Energy beams cut across the darkness like rivers of fire. Missiles rained down like storms of light. The humans had struck first. They had revealed their secret weapon. And now the enemy roared back with all its power. The Titan's wrath stood at the heart of the storm, its shields glowing as waves of alien fire slammed against it. The ship shook, alarms blared, consoles sparked. But the giant did not fall. Its armor held, its cannons returned fire, each blast shaking the void. Human crews inside its halls felt the tremors, but they held steady, their voices calm, their eyes fierce. Admiral Cade on the Iron Resolve gave sharp commands, his voice cutting through the chaos. He ordered the smaller ships to spread wide, to draw enemy fire away from the Titan. Destroyers darted into formation, Frigates weaved between alien cruisers. They launched missiles, rail slugs, torpedoes, filling space with fire. The alien commander shouted for a full assault. He demanded the Titan be destroyed. Wave after wave of alien drones swarmed forward, black wings glinting in the fire. They dove at human ships, lasers blazing, explosions blooming as fighters clashed. Human pilots met them head-on, their small ships darting like sparks. They flew through narrow gaps, weaving through fire. Their voices sharp with focus, one shouted that he had locked onto a drone. Another screamed as his ship was torn apart. Still others pushed forward, their courage greater than their fear. Above Earth, civilians watched in horror and awe. The night sky glowed red and gold. Wreckage rained down like meteors. Flames streaked. Across the atmosphere, some cried in fear. Others cheered with desperate hope. For the first time they saw the Empire's ships fall. For the first time, they saw humans fight back. The Titan's wrath unleashed its full might. Plasma lances burned through enemy cruisers. Missiles tore carriers apart. Its rail cannons fired again and again, each shot splitting ships into fire. The shockwaves rattled through the alien formation. The giant warship was no longer a shadow. It was the burning heart of the battle. But the aliens did not break easily. Their pride would not allow it. Their battleships turned all weapons on the Titan. They poured fire into it. The shields flared brighter, their glow dimmed under the weight. Inside the Titan, lights flickered. Panels burst. Crew shouted warnings. But Commander Rhea stood calm, her voice steady as stone. She ordered more power to the shields. She ordered her gunners to fire again. In the dark, the Hammerfall destroyed another alien frigate, its crew shouting with triumph. But their joy was short. Enemy drones swarmed over them, tearing at their hull. The captain ordered self-defense guns to fire. The ship shook with impacts. But it did not yield. The crew fought with fire in their eyes. The alien flagship commanded its fleet with desperation. Its leader shouted that humans were only one world, that they could not defeat the Empire. He ordered his soldiers to fight harder, but fear had already crept into their voices. For every human ship destroyed, 2 alien ships burned. For every drone swarm unleashed, human fighters cut them down. The battle spread across the orbit, fire and wreckage drifting everywhere. The moon glowed red with reflected light. Earth below trembled with distant thunder. Inside underground bunkers, human commanders watched the battle, their voices tight with tension. One whispered that it was working. Another warned that the aliens still had numbers. But all of them felt the spark of hope, a hope they had not dared to believe in before. On the battlefield, a young pilot named Jace guided his fighter through the fire. His ship darted past burning wreckage, his hands steady on the controls. He targeted an alien drone, locked it, fired. The explosion lit his canopy. His voice rang with fierce joy. He shouted into comms that humans were not prey. They were hunters. The Titan's wrath drove forward like a mountain through fire. Its guns cut through battleships. Its missiles streaked like storms. Its shields glowed brighter with every strike. Commander Rhea's voice echoed across the fleet. She told them to fight harder, to push further, to remember what they were fighting for. The smaller ships followed her command. They surged forward, striking at the flanks of the alien fleet. Stealth frigates slipped close to carriers, planting torpedoes into their cores. Explosions tore ships in half. Human fighters darted between wreckage, turning the battlefield into chaos. The aliens could not control. The alien commander screamed that this was impossible, that one planet could not stand against an empire. But his words were drowned in the fire of his own ships exploding. On Earth, crowds gathered on rooftops, watching the battle. Every flash of fire in the sky made their hearts pound. Every alien wreck gave them hope. Children pointed and whispered the name of the great ship, Titan's Wrath, the symbol of defiance. The burning skies grew heavier with each passing moment. The wreckage of alien and human ships drifted like grave markers. But still the humans fought. They refused to bow. They refused to break. And in the heart of the storm, the Titan's wrath roared, its voice a chorus of cannons, its message clear. Humanity would not surrender. Humanity would not kneel. The Empire had expected silence, but now they faced fire. They faced the fury of a world that refused to die, and as the skies above Earth burned, The galaxy itself began to change. For the first time, the hunters knew fear, and the prey refused to fall. The battle above Earth raged on. The alien fleet still outnumbered the humans, but numbers were no longer enough. The human fleet had struck first. It had struck hard, and now the balance of the fight began to shift. The Titan's wrath pushed forward like a mountain of steel, its cannons roaring again and again, each blast tearing enemy ships apart. Rail slugs ripped through battleships. Plasma lances split cruisers in half. The void was filled with burning wreckage. The great warship did not stop. It did not bend. It moved like a storm that refused to fade. Around it, the smaller human ships fought with fierce courage. Destroyers darted through enemy lines, unleashing torpedoes and rail fire. Stealth frigates slipped behind the larger alien ships, striking their engines before vanishing into the dark. Carriers released waves of fighters, small and fast, dancing between fire. Alien commanders shouted for order. But fear was in their voices. Their perfect formation was broken, their lines shattered. They tried to regroup, but the humans would not give them the chance. The human fleet struck from every angle, like wolves hunting a larger beast. Admiral Cade on the Iron Resolve guided the attack with sharp precision, his voice calm and steady. He ordered his captains to focus on weak points, on supply ships, on carriers, on command vessels. He knew they could not destroy the entire fleet, but they could cut it apart piece by piece. The Hammerfall fired its rail cannons again. Another alien cruiser broke into flames, its crew cheering, but their captain silenced them. He reminded them that the fight was not over. He told them to stay sharp because the enemy would fight harder when pushed into the corner. The alien flagship roared commands into the void. Its leader's pride burned with rage. He demanded his soldiers crush the humans. He promised victory, but his words were hollow. Already 3 of his largest carriers were gone, his fuel lines destroyed, his communications cut, and still the humans pushed forward. Human pilots flew like sparks through the fire. Jace, the young pilot, guided his fighter between debris, his voice calm over comms. He locked onto an enemy drone, fired, and watched it explode. He shouted to his wingmates to hold formation, to strike together. They moved like one, their courage stronger than fear. On Earth, people stood on rooftops watching the burning sky. They saw alien wrecks falling. They saw human ships rising, their hearts filled with hope. Some cried, some shouted, some whispered prayers. They knew the war was not over, but for the first time, they believed it could be won. The Titan's wrath unleashed another storm of fire. Missiles streaked from its bays, rail slugs thundered. The void shook with the soundless roar of war. Alien ships fell one by one. The commander inside the flagship clenched his fists, his pride cracking with every report of destruction. He had come for surrender, but he now faced defiance. Admiral Cade gave the order to press harder, his words steady but filled with fire. He told his captains this was the moment to break the enemy's will. He told them to strike with everything. His voice carried through the fleet, and every human ship answered with thunder. Alien ships tried to regroup again, but the humans used the wreckage as cover. They darted between broken hulks. They hid in debris fields. They launched ambushes from the shadows. Their tactics were sharp, clever, unexpected. The aliens were stronger, but they were not prepared for this kind of fight. One alien cruiser, damaged and burning, tried to retreat, but human fighters swarmed it. Their weapons cut its engines. Explosions bloomed. The wreck drifted into the dark. Another alien destroyer tried to shield its carrier, but Hammerfall's cannons struck, tearing it apart. The carrier followed in flames. Commander Rhea on the Titan's Wrath spoke to her crew, her voice calm and fierce. She told them they were the shield of Earth, the sword of humanity. She told them to remember the people watching below, the families, the children, the world that depended on them. Her words burned in every heart, and the crew fought harder. The alien commander's pride was gone now, replaced by anger and fear. He realized he had underestimated the humans. He realized his victory was slipping away. He screamed for his ships to retreat and regroup. But chaos had already spread. His fleet was breaking apart. His soldiers no longer certain. Human ships pushed harder. Stealth frigates struck again and again. Fighters swarmed enemy wings. Destroyers cut into the enemy's heart. The Titan's wrath fired its cannons until the void glowed with fire. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's fleet began to retreat. One ship after another pulled back, engines burning, leaving wreckage behind. Their voices filled with disbelief. They had never been forced back, never been defeated by a single world, but now they fled. On Earth, cheers erupted. Voices rose. The people shouted with joy. They cried tears of relief. They saw the alien fleet pulling away. They saw their defenders standing strong. They knew this was not the end, but it was proof. Proof that humans could fight. Proof that they could win. The Titan's wrath hovered above the moon, scarred but unbroken, its cannons still glowing. The fleet gathered around it, battered but alive. Admiral Cade looked at the hollow map, at the enemy retreating into the dark, his face calm, his voice steady as he said, "We have turned the tide." The alien commander sat in silence on his bridge, his hands clenched, his pride shattered. He swore they would return. He swore Earth would pay. But deep inside, fear gnawed at him. For the first time in his life, he had faced prey that fought back, prey that struck like hunters. The battle was not over. The war was far from finished. But in the burning skies, in the wreckage and the fire, the truth had been written. The humans had stood. The humans had fought, and the humans had turned the tide. The void above Earth grew quiet after the storm. Broken ships drifted in silence. Fire flickered from shattered hulls, and the smell of smoke and metal filled the decks of every warship. The battle was not yet forgotten. It lingered in every scar, in every burn, in every heartbeat. The alien fleet pulled back, their formations broken, their voices filled with panic. Their commanders shouted to regroup, to return. But many ships did not listen. They fled into the dark, leaving behind wreckage and silence. For the first time in countless battles, the Empire had turned away. Admiral Cade stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, his eyes fixed on the hollow map. The red marks of the enemy faded, their retreat clear. His crew stared in awe. Some cheered, some cried. But the Admiral remained steady, his voice calm. He told them this was only the beginning. He told them the enemy would come back, and next time, they would come with even greater fire. The Titan's wrath floated above the moon like a mountain of steel, its hull cracked and scarred, its shields flickering, but it still stood. It still burned with power. Commander Rhea walked across her bridge, her crew exhausted but unbroken. She raised her voice, soft but strong. She told them they had shown the galaxy the truth, that humanity was not prey, that humanity would not kneel on Earth. The people filled the streets. They pointed at the sky where faint flashes still glowed. They cheered when they saw human ships return from battle, damaged but alive. Mothers held their children close. Fathers raised their fists. Voices shouted the name of their defenders: Titan's Wrath, Iron Resolve, Hammerfall, Black Echo, ships that were no longer secrets but legends. In underground bunkers, commanders shared the news. Some smiled for the first time in years. Others bowed their heads, whispering thanks, but all knew the war was not over. Earth had survived the first storm, but more storms would come. Above, the wreckage of alien ships drifted like grave markers, some burning, some silent. A reminder of the Empire's pride broken in the skies. Human salvage ships moved carefully, collecting what they could. Every fragment of alien technology was a treasure. Every shard a chance to learn, to grow, to prepare for what was coming. Inside the alien flagship, the commander sat in silence, his pride shattered, his hands gripping the console with fury. His officers dared not speak. He had sworn Earth would surrender, he had promised victory, but instead he was forced to retreat, his voice low, filled with venom. He swore they would return. He swore the humans would pay. But deep in his heart, fear gnawed at him, a fear he had never known before. The humans celebrated, but they did not forget the cost. Many ships were gone, many pilots lost, names echoed. Across comms, names that would never answer again. In the halls of the Titan's wrath, empty bunks were silent reminders of sacrifice. Crews lit candles, whispered prayers, and promised to carry the fight for those who had fallen. Jace, the young pilot, landed his fighter on a battered carrier, his hands shaking as he removed his helmet, his face pale, his eyes wide. He had survived, but many of his wingmates had not. He stood in silence, staring at the sky. He whispered to himself that their fight was not in vain. He promised he would fly again. Admiral Cade spoke to the fleet, his voice calm, carried through every ship. He told them they had done the impossible. They had stood against the greatest empire in the galaxy, and they had not fallen. He told them the war was not over, but today proved that humanity could fight, that humanity could rise. His words burned in the hearts of every soldier, every captain, every crew member. On Earth, children who once cried in fear now shouted with pride. They drew pictures of warships. They spoke the names of their heroes. They told each other that the sky belonged to humans now, not to invaders. The fear that had once gripped the world began to fade, replaced with fire. The Titan's wrath powered down slowly, its lights dimming, its engines cooling. But its shadow still loomed, a reminder that Earth was not helpless, a reminder that in the darkest silence they had built hope, they had built defiance. The alien fleet disappeared into the stars, but their retreat carried a message across the galaxy. For the first time the Empire had been pushed back, for the first time prey had struck the predator. Whispers spread across distant worlds. Whispers of humans. Whispers of Earth. Whispers of a fleet that rose from the dark. Commander Rhea stood at the window of her bridge, her hands behind her back, her eyes on the burning sky. She knew more. Battles would come. She knew more blood would be shed, but she also knew one truth. The Empire would never again see Earth as weak. The galaxy would never again laugh at humanity. The silence that had once been fear was now strength. The darkness that had once been despair was now fire. Earth had endured. Earth had fought. Earth had risen. And as the last wreckage drifted in the void, the message was clear. The invaders had waited for Earth's surrender. But instead, from the dark, the fleet had risen, and it would rise again, stronger, fiercer, unbroken. The war was far from over, but the first victory was theirs, and the fire of Earth would never be extinguished.